Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Mindful Grandparent, The Art of Loving Our Children's Children, by Marilyn Mcentyre and Shirley Showalter. Narrated by Pam Ward. Introduction. Be astonished. Tell about it. Mary Oliver, sometimes. What good are grandparents at a time like this? It may sound like a dismissive question put that way, but it's a good one to try to answer. What good do we hope to do? What particular gifts do we bring into our children's lives and their children's? How are we to understand grandparenting as a calling? And how, we wondered as we imagined writing this book, might we share what we are learning about that calling with others who are entering into this rewarding, challenging, sometimes bewildering chapter of their own stories. In the course of many conversations that gave birth to this book, we found out a lot about each other's grandparenting. Shirley bakes more cookies than Marilyn. Marilyn has interred a deceased pill bug by her lemon tree. Shirley knows what to do with oatmeal boxes, fabric scraps, and aging wooden implements. Marilyn has a repertoire of riddles. What Shirley knows about grandparenting began in a Mennonite childhood on a Pennsylvania farm. What Marilyn knows about grandparenting grew out of listening to her own live-in grandparents at a small dinner table in a Southern California suburb. Both of us continue to enjoy the reading, reflection, conversation, and companionable marriages that have sustained and supported our careers in education. Both of us pay close attention to public life, acutely aware of the immense challenges our grandchildren and their generation already face in disrupted schools, disturbing images on screens, deepening income inequality, and climate change. Both of us are aware, too, of how critical it is to help our white grandchildren humbly participate in the long-overdue reckoning with racism. Both of us pray for those children, their parents, and the many children who are at far greater risk than those we hold close in our family circles. Social science research can help us take a long view of the calling to the role of grandparent. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes is credited with the grandmother hypothesis, which explains evolutionary advancement by the caregiving of two generations and multiple carers rather than only one. Females of many species in the animal world die soon after giving birth to their last offspring. Humans, however, developed extended caregiving roles that linked the elderly to the young. This created a kind of symbiosis in which a long childhood allows extended learning, and the wisdom gathered can be passed on to future generations. Psychology researcher Alison Gopnik, writing in her article Vulnerable Yet Vital in Eon magazine, concludes that childhood and old age, those vulnerable, unproductive periods of our lives, turn out biologically to be the key to many of our most valuable, deeply human capacities. If this is true, then grandparents need to do all they can to develop the skills that most aid in building relationships with the young. Patience and storytelling are two of the most cherished values of older age. One could name many more, but all of them lead to that sacred place of connection where love flourishes and learning grows. That connection happens in the course of many learning moments. Moments is a key word. These chapters don't provide a chronological, step-by-step guide to grandparenting. They are by no means comprehensive. This isn't a study or an overview. Though our professional lives have been spent in academic settings, this is not an academic book. Rather, we like to think of it as an invitation to other grandparents to reflect on their own moments of learning, growth, amusement, concern, and altered awareness. As we find our way into the lives of little people who need us in ways no one imagines at the outset, we are changed. The passage from parent to grandparent differs from all other changes in our lives. because it involves not only a new dimension of our identity, but also a transformative shift in relationship with the adult children we love. It is a delicate transition. We step in, we step back. We witness, we help where we can. We make room for new needs and life-changing surprises. Mindful grandparenting is what we've chosen to call this effort to bring attention and care and love to our children's children. Jon Kabat-Zinn, in Full Catastrophe Living, has named 7 attitudes of mindfulness: non-judging, patience, beginner's mind, trust, non-striving, acceptance, and letting go. These approaches apply to all of life and are especially relevant at the point of change, what we might think of as the threshold time or liminal space. Theologian Richard Rohr has called the threshold experience God's waiting room. Grandparents find themselves in God's waiting room often. As we wrote these chapters, we encouraged each other to be mindful of our own memories, observations, conversations with other grandparents, and in some instances, research. The stories we tell about our own grandchildren are ones that have helped us understand children and ourselves in new ways. The resources we offer at the end of each chapter have been helpful to us as well. They are not comprehensive, but are representative of the wealth of material available. We hope these resources enrich what we can offer and receive as active, engaged, open-hearted elders. Elder is a term to reclaim. It's one thing to hear it in a marketing context, ads for residential facilities that provide elder care, for instance. It's another to hear it in a legal or political context, in warnings about elder abuse, or observations about elders or seniors as a voting bloc. Some of us hear it in church contexts as a title for those ordained to particular ministries. But when we think of reclaiming the term and of applying it to ourselves, we think about how it is understood in indigenous communities. According to Dr. Beatrice Medicine in Learning to be an Anthropologist and Remaining Native, in those communities, elders are seen as repositories of cultural and philosophical knowledge and are the transmitters of such information. Not all old people are elders in this sense. It's a term that entails both earned authority and responsibility to the community. If we aspire to claim our authority and carry it graciously, and to be of service to younger people, we have a lot of listening to do. The terms of both public and private life have changed profoundly in ways Alvin Toffler began to articulate in Future Shock. Published in 1970, that book focused on the accelerating pace of change and what it would take to adapt as quickly as we have had to in the decades since then. When Marilyn's daughter, then in high school, gently said, "Mom, it's not the way it was when you were in school," Marilyn realized how much she needed to learn. Pocketing lunch money and bus passes, her daughter and her peers walked into a rather more complicated social, institutional, electronic, and political environment every morning than we elders did at their ages. Digital devices, a wider and wilder range of TV programming, highly politicized education and healthcare policies, anxieties about gun violence. All these things have changed the way they live and move and socialize, and the degree of supervision they've come to tolerate and expect. We were not so closely watched, nor so assailed by constant choices. As parents and grandparents, we do well to observe and listen and consider the manifold ways the world has changed. That said, we can claim and even celebrate those generational differences. If we have homes with slightly slower rhythms, if we lead quieter lives than our adult children, who face demands that have diminished for us, we may be able to offer refuge, respite, or periodic reframing of what our grandchildren have come to think of as normal. We can provide perspective, and, if we live nearby, perhaps a pause in the week. We might be able to afford the time to linger over small things and remind our grandchildren and ourselves that the small things are actually big things in disguise. Or maybe, if we're still working, we can model aging in a way that teaches the children that adults' lives are rich and varied and interesting, even after they become grandparents. We are grandparents, yes, but grandparenting may be only one part of life stories that are worth hearing. We hope that our reflections may be useful to you, our listeners, and also that this book might encourage you and other grandparents, especially those who live in very different circumstances than we do, to share your own learning moments. None of us has to invent this wheel. While we come into parenting and grandparenting with more or less examined notions of how to do it, the happy task of grandparenting takes us to a new learning edge. Maybe we can meet one another there. Part 1. The Widening Circle. When I was one, I had just begun. A. Milne. Chapter 1. What to expect when they're expecting. Shirley. Pretty joy, sweet joy, but 2 days old. Sweet joy, I call thee. Thou dost smile, I sing the while, sweet joy befall thee. William Blake, Infant Joy. I received the news that I would become a grandmother on the phone. My son and daughter-in-law shared their secret and asked us to hold it with them. A few short weeks later, they called again. We lost the baby. My son choked out. But then he moved on to say in his usually steady voice that they would try again. A few months later, the same thing happened. Phone call 1, then phone call 2. I worried. I knew that pregnancy losses put stress on a marriage. Would the newlywed but adult children, ages 35 and 37, get discouraged? If they couldn't have children, would they lose the bloom of their love? I wasn't thinking about the fact that I might never become a grandparent. I was still busy with my career, not knitting baby blankets in hopeful anticipation. When the third good news call came from Anthony and Chelsea, we steeled ourselves for another loss. 2 months passed, then 3. We started to get hopeful, since none of the miscarriages had progressed this far. We asked our Catholic friends to light candles, and we lit them ourselves in every cathedral we visited. Our prayers were mostly silent, our thoughts constant. Month 4 passed, then 5. Every month we relaxed a little more until at last the baby reached full term. Then came the call from Brooklyn. We're headed to St. Luke's Hospital. For the next few hours we did not need St. Paul to tell us to pray without ceasing. A week later, we held Owen William Showalter in our arms and entered a new world. Safe arrival had been our first concern. Now we could give ourselves fully to loving Owen, relearning how to hold and diaper and soothe and burp a baby. It wasn't as easy as riding a bike. When Owen was 9 months old, his parents tried for another baby. This time we were present to hear the news. This time there were no sad follow-up calls. Julia Jane burst upon the scene after a normal pregnancy, and we were in the apartment with Owen, taking him to St. Luke's to greet his sister just a few hours after her birth. We thought perhaps Owen and Julia would be our only grandchildren. Our daughter Kate had told us not to make any assumptions. So when Kate and Nick called from Pittsburgh 7 years after Anthony and Chelsea had, to announce that they were expecting a baby, I was truly surprised and delighted. By that time, Stuart and I were quite experienced grandparents, and we're eager to welcome another child into our daughter's family and into our larger family. Now Lydia, our third grandchild, is 3 years old. This year, all our children and grandchildren will converge at our home in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. Owen, Julia, and Lydia will continue to build Cousin World, a project they started when they first met each other. They convene in the basement, where we store vintage toys and books, their parents' leftovers, on the deck, where we drink mocha, 1 drop of coffee and a half cup of hot chocolate, and in the driveway, where they fly down the hill on little cars we got at a garage sale. Advent and Christmas always bring back the memories of those 5 phone calls announcing pregnancies. Is it sacrilege to think of human birth news as an annunciation, not unlike that of Mary, the mother of Jesus? Is it strange to imagine they deserve a response like Mary's song in what we know as the Magnificat? I like to think it is just the opposite. As a mother, I know a tiny iota of Mary's awe and joy, but the fraction I know deepens my desire to know the Creator God who entered into the world the same way you and I did. As a grandmother, I wonder about Mary's mother, wishing the nativity scene included her. The Christmas carols I have sung joyfully all my life have always moved me, but one, especially, has changed for me since I became a grandma. It's often the last song in the Christmas Eve service, sung as we pass the flame down the row to light each other's candles. As soon as I sing, all is calm, all is bright, I think of hearing the phone ring. This year I might light my candle from the candle of one of my precious 3 grandchildren, each one a miracle, each one a reflection of God's great love. Together we will sing Silent Night, Holy Night, all is calm, all is bright. Round yon Virgin Mother and Child, holy infant, so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Suggestions for grandparents. 1. Conversations about whether and when to have babies can be hard for couples to manage. It's likely better not to bring up this subject at all. When or if your children choose to talk about their choices or hopes, be as supportive as possible. 2. If miscarriage has been part of your family's journey, there are supportive online communities in both the United States and the United Kingdom. HealingAfterPregnancyLoss.com and miscarriageassociation.org.uk may prove useful places to do research and find community. 3. Holidays such as Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa offer many opportunities to strengthen the ties of family love and to be reminded that these ties are sacred. Attending services together is just the beginning. Chapter 2. Labors of Love. Marilyn. This first-time grandma was her daughter's rock. Caroline Bologna. Comment in a birthroom photo essay. I didn't take for granted that any of my daughters would want me to be in the birthing room when their babies were born. I had never thought about inviting my own mother, since we were living at the time on the other side of the world. I'm not sure I would have, as much as I loved her. So I was surprised and touched each time the invitation from my daughters came. From one, it was to accompany her through labor, and then to let her and her husband have the room to themselves in those shocking, sacred minutes immediately preceding and following delivery. From 2 others, it was to be there the entire time, coaching, breathing with them, softly and repeatedly reminding them to let their strong bodies do what they were designed to do. All their husbands were there, too, engaged in their different ways, willing, if not eager, to see their beautiful wives in pain they really couldn't do much about. All of them had read the requisite books, What to Expect When You're Expecting, Mindful Birthing, The Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth, or their equivalents. I had read a few of my own over the years, and had cause to be grateful not only for the abundant guidance available, but also for the legacy of a missionary mother who had attended many births and deaths with capable, cheerful, kindly, quiet encouragement. I remembered my own labor, of course, each time. I remembered learning to negotiate with my body about how to meet each contraction with breath and intention. I remembered the power of repetition, shallow breaths. You can completely relax now until the next one comes. Your body knows what to do. I'm right here. I remembered the radical amazement when the head crowned, and a tiny being emerged from my body as if this particular miracle had never happened before. And it hadn't. It was helpful to know ahead of time exactly what each daughter wanted from me, and to have made sure that each son-in-law was comfortable with the decision to have me in the room. It was a happy task to arrange ritual objects where they could provide the grounding and beauty each daughter needed. It was exhilarating to be so deeply focused on one thing with such fierce, loving attention for all the hours it took, 18 in one case, and to feel my own energies synchronizing with each beautiful woman I had brought into the world. It was humbling to watch each daughter find something heroically strong and resilient in herself and bring it forth. It was scary to know that things could go wrong. Things do. One baby was taken to the NICU for extra oxygen and stayed there for his first 3 days. It was awesome, in the best and richest sense of that overused word, to feel that we were stepping into a long, ancient lineage of women who had helped women bring new life into the world. It's good that fathers are now so routinely invited to be part of the process, yet there is still a dimension of childbirth that is a female ritual, mysterious even to us, but belonging to us as a birthright. I learned the dance a little differently each time. When to lean in, when to rub her head or back, when to step away and let her husband take the lead, when to speak, when to be silent. I learned to let tears come when they surfaced, almost an unnoticed, accepted, and undramatic part of my own body's complete consent to the demands of the moment. One labor went somewhat awry. The baby wouldn't rotate into position and remained transverse for hours. Finally, after what seemed to me an unseemly delay, his mama was whisked off to the operating room for a last-minute cesarean delivery. Only the father was allowed in with her. Standing nearby in the hallway, I heard a cry come from her that shook my whole body, as I later learned. They reached in to try one last time to move the baby into place. I wouldn't have thought her capable of a sound like that. When that baby emerged in his dad's arms, bundled and breathing softly, no one would have guessed what a production his appearance had required. I laughed at how utterly untroubled he seemed to be, as though drowsily wondering what the fuss was all about. Those first hours and days were full of other family folk waiting in the hospital hallways, sharing snacks, speculating, asking for updates every time I took a bathroom break. I was honored to be the sweaty messenger and, finally, to step back and enjoy their delighted cooing over the tiny toes and waving hands when their turn came. Relinquishing the little person, now a part of the rest of my own life, to parents, other grandparents, eager aunties, and other fond people in the wide circles of love in my daughters' lives, was the first step into a role that keeps unfolding. It's still a dance, coming close, step back and let others in, wait for invitation, honor their intimate space, speak when they ask or when the spirit guides you, learn to hold your peace. And when a new thing happens, another baby, an illness, a move, a career change, be ready to stand by and remind them, breathe, relax into this. Call on the deep part of you that knows what to do. Allow. Surrender. Say yes. Suggestions for grandparents. 1. If you're invited to be present for any part of a baby's arrival, Books might help you imagine your own role, understand your own hopes and limits, and take stock of your own anxieties. Penny Simpkins' The Birth Partner and The Art of Coaching for Childbirth by Neri Life Shoma and Christine Morton are good places to start. 2. It's good to have as specific a conversation as possible ahead of time so that you don't overstep and so that you step up at the right time. Those hours are tender and also touchy. She may change her mind midstream about what she needs, even about wanting you there. It's good to gird your loins, know not to take offense, remember that she's in charge, and call on your own spiritual resources to practice flexibility, openness to the call of the moment, and deep, prayerful gratitude for what love calls forth in each of us. Chapter 3. Your New Name. Shirley. A good name is better than precious ointment. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 1. What do you want to be called? Is the first question friends and family ask when they know you will be a grandparent soon. It wasn't always this way. 50 years ago, grandparent names like Neapolitan ice cream came in 3 flavors. Most formal was grandmother and grandfather. Most common was grandma and grandpa. Least formal was grandmom and grandpop. Sometimes the names were shortened to Grammy and Gramps. Today, however, names for grandparents exceed even the expanded menu for ice cream. Just a quick survey among my friends, what do your grandchildren call you, yielded this variety for grandmothers. Booba, Grammy, Gram, Oma, Ama, Poppy, Nana, Bani, Ga, Mom, Mima, Papi, More. And for grandfathers, Zadie, Papo, Papa, Jum, Opa, Pa, Bumpum, Jeepa, Pawpaw, Peepaw. Grandparent names are a wonderful opportunity to connect children to their family history and cultural heritage. Sometimes other languages offer good choices. Oma and Opa. Also, Papi, Papo, mentioned earlier, came from this source. We could add Abuelita, Tito, Bibi, Tatu, Nyanya, Nakuku, Ugogo, Babu, Natate Mogolo, and Ubabamkulu. Yannick Rice Lamb wrote an essay, The G Word, Grandmas Who Don't Want to Be Called Grandma, for BlackAmericaWeb.com, explaining why she wants to be called Nini, and why many black grandmothers prefer to make up new names or revive African names. Sometimes the name stays fluid until the child tries to say it, hence one-syllable names like Ga and Pa. Even if the child chooses the name, the grandparent chooses whether to accept it. Maybe you'll want Goldie Hawn's name, Glamma, or try these on for size, Bubba, Sonoma, and Napa. If you like these, be prepared to have people compare them to franchised restaurants, Apple's latest operating system, or Subaru models. Grandparent names have become so variable that my niece and her husband like to tease their teenagers. Someday, if you have kids, they must call us Bobby and Captain. According to my niece, this proclamation has evoked the desired effect, groaning and eye-rolling. Of course, you could just go by your version of Shirley and Stu. 5% of grandparents choose to have their grandchildren call them by their given names. Looking at all these options, you might not guess that Grandma and Grandpa still remain the most popular choices in the United States. One study suggests that 70% of grandmothers and 60% of grandfathers are referred to by some form of Grandma and Grandpa. The name you eventually choose can be a signal about the kind of relationship you seek with your grandchild, as well as the way you envision yourself. Is your self-image that of a young person or an older person, for example? According to one study, the actual age of grandparents varies between about 38 and 100, and the average age is 50. The more informal the name, the younger it might sound. The more unusual, the more it can lead to the question, what's the story behind your name? I picked my grandparent name in 2000.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?